In Iowa, cleanup continues after a rare and deadly storm packing 100-per-mile-an-hour winds swept across the Midwest last week.
We've done gas runs and ice runs for other people, as well as once we got power back, we've offered shelter.
A lot of things are back to normal in town, but a lot of things will never be back to normal.
The storm is blamed for at least 4 deaths and is estimated to have caused around $4 billion worth of damage to the state. 8,200 homes and about a third of Iowa's cropland was destroyed or extensively damaged. Tens of thousands are still without power over a week later. Meanwhile, President Trump is expected to visit Cedar Rapids today to tour some of the hardest hit areas. This comes as President Trump only partially approved an emergency declaration after claiming on his official presidential Twitter account that a full request was signed. CBS News 2020 campaign reporter Adam Brewster joins me now to break this down for us. Adam, good to see you. So what parts of the emergency declaration were approved and what was not?
So this started on, Governor Kim Reynolds, Iowa's governor, a Republican, on Sunday night, filed in a disaster declaration with FEMA. As you mentioned, about $4 billion in damage, she said, happened around the state because of that storm a week ago. And there were 2 parts to the emergency or disaster declaration request. One covering 27 counties was an individual disaster declaration, which would help homeowners and businesses with things like damage to their property, damage to housing, things like crops or farm equipment. The other part was a 16-county public infrastructure damage request and a public assistance request, and that would cover things like debris removal and public assistance. That 16-county part is the one that the president had approved yesterday, that part of the disaster declaration. Now, in that approval of that, the White House said that they're continuing to assess damage, and there could be further approvals down the line when they get sort of a clearer picture about those 27 counties for the individual assistance, not approved just yet.
So how have state government officials responded, Adam?
So a spokesperson for Governor Kim Reynolds told me this morning that they're still assessing damage and they do expect that individual assistance to be approved soon. A spokesperson also for Senator Joni Ernst, a Republican who's up for re-election this year, said she also expects that individual assistance to be approved soon and is going to continue working with the rest of Iowa's congressional delegation to make sure everyone in Iowa gets all of the help and resources that they need in order to recover from this catastrophic event that happened there a week ago. Democratic Congresswoman Abby Finkenauer, whose district was hit very hard, she represents Northeast Iowa. Cedar Rapids is in her district. That is one of the cities that was hardest hit by this storm. Kind of went after the president for not approving the entire declaration at once, but said she is going to keep working to make sure that that gets done and gets approved so that people have their resources. So for the most part, people seem to say, this is coming, we expect it to be all approved soon.
So did President Trump provide a reasoning for only the partial approval of the emergency declaration? Because as we pointed out on Twitter, he said he was doing a full declaration. I mean, let's face it, the president has said things on Twitter that are not true. In fact, earlier this month, he retweeted information that said children were almost immune from the coronavirus, which Twitter removed for being false. So it doesn't surprise me, but what are we hearing as to the rationale for this partial approval?
The way the White House described it is that just damage assessments are continuing and that process takes a little bit longer. Again, the state leaders in Iowa are fully expecting the president to approve disaster declarations for those 27 counties and for people to be able to get the help and the resources that they need in order to recover from this storm.
Are you hearing that there could be any potential impact from voters with regards to the 2020 election?
I think that'll be interesting to watch. So in 2008, Cedar Rapids had a catastrophic, massive flood. On the campaign trail last year in Iowa, anytime you went through Cedar Rapids, that flood came up. Whether it was a candidate bringing it up in their stump speech, whether it was a question about climate change, that came up often. The lasting impact that event had on that community, you can still see it today. And that was when a lot of people said they started to wake up to the effects of climate change. Now, I think it's hard to say exactly how much impact this storm will have on people's votes, but we know that November is just a couple of months away, not 12 years away, like that 2008 flood was. And that had such a lasting impact. This storm will stick with those communities affected for a very long time. But you've seen the president, this is a state he won by 9 points in 2016, and we've seen his campaign have to go on defense a little bit. Some recent polls have shown that the race is probably tighter than the president's campaign expected it to be. His campaign talks about their ground game and the infrastructure they've built in Iowa over the last several years. They're very proud of that. Former Vice President Joe Biden has put a senior team there on the ground, and they are going a bit on offense in Iowa. And that's a state, of course, during the caucuses when all that dust settled after those results, that he ended up finishing fourth in the Democratic caucuses. But we've seen the president go on defense. He's had to put a lot of money into advertising. Since mid-March, they've spent about $2.5 million, according to Cantor Media, who tracks advertisements. And we've seen Vice President Mike Pence go to Iowa a couple of times, including as recently as last Thursday.
And as we said earlier, the president's going to Iowa today. He'll participate in that disaster recovery briefing in Cedar Rapids. What are you expecting out of that?
So that'll be, a roundtable, a presidential type event. He's expected to be joined by Governor Reynolds, Senator Ernst, other elected leaders, people who were impacted by the storm. It'll be a chance for them to talk about what they went through and what they saw. And when you see the videos, some of them, there are videos out there of just trees getting uprooted and blown by the wind. It is really remarkable to see in Iowa. And some people said they had no idea that the storm was going to be this strong. So you'll probably expect to hear stories about that and the aftermath of that and the recovery that's needed. It is a bit of a contrast with some of the other travel the president is doing this week to counter-program the Democratic National Convention. Yesterday, he was in Minnesota and Wisconsin, basically holding pseudo-rallies, taking his message out against presumptive nominee Joe Biden, his vice presidential pick Kamala Harris, about why he is the better choice and why he deserves 4 more years. And he's expected to go to Arizona later today, Pennsylvania later this week, to continue those sorts of messages. So this roundtable is a bit of a contrast. This will be a more, likely a more presidential event that focuses on people who were impacted, what they saw, and what they need to help recover.
All right. Adam Brewster, always great to talk to you, my friend. Thank you very much.
Thank you.